The bruises on her wrist looked like shadows from a storm she couldn't escape. And Jiwon Kim didn't ignore storms, not in his empire, not in his city, and certainly not in the woman who'd been stirring something forgotten in him for weeks. She whispered an apology, already pulling away like a wave retreating from the shore. But he'd made his choice the instant her sleeve betrayed her. Whoever had marked her had just awakened a force that would drown them all. Before we dive deeper into this tale of hidden scars and unlikely justice, hit that subscribe button if you're hooked, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from: Seoul, Kingston, or somewhere in between. Your support keeps these stories alive and roaring. The restaurant was winding down for the night. The last whispers of Busan's elite drifted out through rain-slicked doors, guarded by men who blended into the shadows like extensions of Jiwon's will. Soft jazz mingled with the steady drum of rain against the tall windows, matching the rhythm of his thoughts as he watched her weave between tables. Weeks now. That's how long Danielle had been here. That's how long he'd been noticing her. The precise grace in her movements when she thought eyes were elsewhere. The way she startled at sudden noises, but never at his presence. As if some instinct already sensed the difference between predators who destroyed and those who protected. He shouldn't be observing her this intently. She was staff. He had codes for that, boundaries that kept his world disciplined and his past buried. But Danielle had a way of unraveling those codes. She'd been vibrant at first, her Jamaican lilt sharp enough to banter with the kitchen crew, bold enough to smile when his enforcer cracked jokes about imported spices. There'd been fire in her eyes then, the kind that made him imagine her in his hidden seaside villa instead of this upscale hideaway, wearing something beyond that starched uniform. That fire had dimmed lately, crushed by whatever made her shoulders hunch, and her sleeves tug lower than needed, even in the humid evening air. Jiwon tracked her approach to his table now, details sharpening in his mind while his men debated tomorrow's shipments nearby. The way she clutched the wine bottle too firmly, how her breath hitched when she drew within arm's reach. The careful positioning of her wrists, concealed and guarded. "Your wine, Mr. Kim." Her voice had softened, stripped of the melody it carried weeks ago. He wanted that melody back, wanted to know what had silenced it. She leaned to pour, and gravity exposed her careful facade. The bottle's weight shifted, her hold adjusted, and her left sleeve gave up a sliver of skin. Jiwon went utterly still. Purple-black bruises ringed her wrist like a cruel tattoo. 4 clear impressions where fingers had gripped hard, possessive, and vicious. A thumb's shadow opposite, completing another's handprint on her flesh. Something ancient and protective surged in his chest, memories of his mother's hidden pain, long buried under layers of power. Danielle's eyes met his, caught exactly what he saw, and her face paled like storm clouds gathering. She yanked the sleeve down sharply enough to send wine splashing across the tablecloth, crimson spreading like spilled blood. "I'm so sorry. I'll fetch a cloth." "Don't." One word, calm as a blade's edge. "Sit down, Miss Richards." "I should really." "I wasn't asking." The command slipped out, low and unyielding, laced with an edge that wasn't just authority, it was concern. Her quick breath said she felt it too, felt the shift from distant observer to something far more perilous. She sat. Not willingly, but because that tone left no space for debate. Wise woman. Around them, the restaurant's hum persisted. His men's chatter, glasses tinkling, a politician settling his tab at the next booth. Ordinary sounds in an extraordinary fracture. Jiwon leaned in, claiming the space deliberately, near enough to see her pulse flutter in her neck, to sense the storm of fear and defiance warring in her, near enough that she'd feel his focus like the rain outside, relentless, inescapable. "Show me the other one." "It's nothing," I slipped. "You didn't slip." His voice dipped lower, intimate as a shared secret. "Someone seized you repeatedly, from the fading shades. So let's bypass the deception, because I'm skilled at detecting it, and you're wounding my sense of honor by thinking otherwise." A spark of something defiance, perhaps flashed through her fear. That's what he sought, the strength she'd been burying. "My honor isn't your concern, Mr. Kim. It is when it means my waitress arrives marked like a victim in a war she didn't start." He paused, letting it sink. "It especially is when I've spent weeks contemplating what you'd look like in my world instead of this one. And now I'm considering if I must end someone first." The admission lingered between them, too raw for the polished elegance of the restaurant. Her eyes widened, lips parting in astonishment. "You can't. You don't mean—" "I absolutely mean it." He extended his hand slowly, offering her the chance to withdraw, and grazed his fingers over her covered wrist. She shivered but held steady. "Tell me who did this, Danielle. Give me a name." For a suspended moment, He thought she might. Saw her balancing the weight of truth against endless silence. Saw her yearning to trust him, this lethal man who'd just confessed his pull toward her, who viewed her bruises as a personal affront. Then terror prevailed. She pulled back, rising so suddenly her chair scraped against the floor. "I have to go. This is you can't." "I can." He rose with lethal poise. His stature and aura honed from years commanding Soul's shadows, filling the room like an incoming tide. "I can do whatever is needed in this city. The question is whether you'll name him, or if I'll uncover it the unforgiving way." "There's nothing to uncover." Her voice fractured. "Please, just pretend you saw nothing." She fled toward the kitchen before he could reply, moving with the practiced evasion of someone who'd mastered survival. Jiwon watched her vanish, every disciplined instinct he'd forged now straining against its chains. He'd built his syndicate on calculated mercy and strategic force. He'd learned when to act and when to observe. But someone had laid hands on a woman who'd begun to echo his deepest regrets. Someone had scarred her, frightened her, made her hide. Someone had just turned this deeply personal. He drew his phone, eyes fixed on the kitchen door where Danielle had disappeared. One call. That's all it took to unleash his network. "Chul, my office. Now. What's the issue?" "Everything." Jiwon's reflection gazed back from the rain-streaked window. Tailored suit, unyielding eyes, the face of a man who'd transformed pain into power. "And I need you to help me expose it." He ascended the private stairs to his office, each step measured. Through the one-way glass, he could see Danielle emerge from the kitchen, resuming her tasks with mechanical efficiency. She'd adjusted her sleeves again, barriers restored, but Jiwon had already glimpsed beneath them, witnessed the wounds someone believed they could inflict without consequence. Busan's skyline glittered through his office windows, all those towers of influence and illusion, shining against the night, beautiful deceptions in a city fueled by darker realities. Jiwon knew those realities. He'd forged his empire in their depths, learning early that true justice didn't reside in courtrooms or hospitals. It emerged in quiet confrontations, in favors demanded and debts enforced. It emerged when men like him decided a line had been crossed. He poured a glass of soju and waited, his mind already mapping possibilities. Who would dare harm her? Who had the reach? Who thought their status made them invincible? Minutes later, Chul entered without knocking, reading the chill in Jiwon's silence like the loyal enforcer he was. "Boss?" Jiwon turned from the window, his resolve set. The protection came first, the rest could follow. Danielle Richards. I need it all. Where she lives, her routines, her connections. He paused, voice turning to steel. "And I need to know who believes they can bruise someone I've chosen to shield." Chul didn't flinch. When Jiwon Kim demanded something, you provided it before the echo faded. By dawn's first light, he was climbing the private stairs to Jiwon's office, with a dossier that carried the weight of thunder. The lights burned on. Naturally, Jiwon stood at the window overlooking the awakening city, soju glass loose in his hand, untouched. He'd swapped his evening suit for dark attire and a simple jacket. His planning garb, Chul called it, the look he wore when corruption was about to crumble. "Tell me you uncovered something." Jiwon didn't turn. Chul placed the dossier on the desk with deliberate force. "You won't like it. I already despise that someone dared touch her. Show me the depths." Jiwon crossed to the desk, opened the dossier, and froze. The top photo showed a man in his 40s, polished features, dark hair styled with surgical precision, eyes cold as sterile steel. He wore a white coat and a philanthropist's smile, standing before a hospital podium with Busan's medical elite seal behind him. Beneath, in Chul's neat script, Dr. Mingyu Park, Chief Surgeon, Busan Central Hospital. Damn. The word emerged quiet. Lethal. It deepens. Chul flipped the page. He's no ordinary doctor. He's the city's angel surgeon saving lives publicly while running shadows, leading anti-trafficking initiatives, donating to police funds, and he's tied to our world indirectly. Jiwon's voice flattened, emotionless, the sign he was already plotting. How? Investigating us through back channels, pushing for stricter port regulations to cut our supply lines. The reason we've shifted operations to Incheon. Chul paused. He's connected. Politicians, police chiefs, the mayor's office. The man's a fortress, boss. Jiwon examined the photo, committing every detail to memory. Dr. Minho Park beamed at the camera with the ease of someone who'd never faced true reckoning, someone who believed his white coat rendered him divine, someone who'd never crossed Jiwon Kim. Continue. Chul produced more photos. These were raw, surveillance captures. Park with Danielle outside a upscale apartment, her hand in his, both poised. Another at a charity event, her in a silk dress that screamed status, his arm around her waist possessive, controlling. The next image tightened Jiwon's grip. Same apartment, different date. Danielle heading to a car, scarf hiding her neck. But the angle revealed what concealment couldn't. A faint shadow along her jaw, makeup failing to mask it. When was this? Months ago. Sources say they were involved for over a year. She was his resident doctor, that's how it started. Ambitious, talented, the perfect accessory for his image. Chul's tone hardened. She lived with him briefly. Neighbors heard fights, intense ones, but no one reported because he's untouchable. Jiwon's thumb traced Danielle's face in the photo. An uncharacteristic tenderness. Close enough. 2 disturbance logs exist. Officers spoke to Park privately and vanished. No paperwork. Chul slid another document. She tried to flee twice. Filed complaints. But Park arrived with top lawyers. Claimed she was unstable, vengeful. Judges sided with him. Chul's face was stone. She escaped fully weeks ago. Moved to a quiet spot. Got the job here under a different name. Richards, not his influence. She's been vanishing. He's been searching. It wasn't a question. Can't confirm yet. But traffic cams near her building show his car hospital plates appearing late nights. 5 times last month. Always in shadows. Jiwon's hands formed fists. He's toying with her, reminding her he's the storm that never ends. What now? Inform her I require a meeting. Shift review. Jiwon's voice stayed even, but his gaze never left Danielle's fragile form below. And Chul, secure Park's records. I want proof if those shadows trace to him. Danielle was late 20 minutes and it didn't go unnoticed. The staff traded looks as she hurried through the back door at closing's edge, her usual poise fraying like storm-torn sails. Her hair was pinned too severely, the style of someone fading into walls. Shadows ringed her eyes despite the careful makeup applied with unsteady hands. Something had shifted since the spill. Something had made her dread this place. From his office overlook, Jiwon followed her pre-closing routine. She jumped when a tray clattered, tensed when a colleague brushed her arm in hello. Her fingers shook tying her apron, fumbling twice before success. Whatever Park was orchestrating, it was accelerating. She's fracturing, Chul said softly, materializing beside Jiwon at the barrier. Park's pressure is mounting. Has he approached her building? Not outright, but anonymous calls hit her line this morning. 3, blocked. Chul showed the logs on his phone. She answered the last. No words spoken. But she looked like death. Jiwon's resolve hardened like forged steel. The empathy he'd long suppressed was rising, ready to reshape the city's corrupt foundations. But first, the backstory of his own haunted past and the surveillance that would expose Park's empire demanded unraveling. Jiwon's resolve hardened like forged steel. The empathy he'd long suppressed was rising, ready to reshape the city's corrupt foundations. But first, the backstory of his own haunted past and the surveillance that would expose Park's empire demanded unraveling. The image clung to him like smoke from a dying fire. Those bruises purple and insistent, mapping out someone else's cruelty on Danielle's skin. Jiwon paced his office, the rain outside a relentless murmur against the glass, as if the storm itself conspired to unearth what he'd buried deep. He couldn't shake it, not the way her wrist had looked, fragile yet defiant under the restaurant's dim lights, nor the flicker of survival in her eyes when she'd met his gaze. It stirred something primal, a ghost he'd thought long exorcised. Memories surfaced unbidden, sharp as a blade's edge. His mother, in their cramped Seoul apartment years ago, before the syndicate had claimed him. She'd worn similar marks, hidden under long sleeves and forced smiles, inflicted by a father whose rage was as predictable as the tides. Jiwon had been too young then, too powerless, watching her shrink into silence while the man who should have protected her became the monster instead. That weakness had forged him, turned a boy into a boss who commanded respect through calculated mercy and unyielding force. But seeing Danielle's bruises, it cracked the armor. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a mirror to his one unforgivable failure. And in Busan, where power was currency, he wouldn't fail again. Chul leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his broad frame casting a shadow in the low light. He'd been with Jiwon since the early days, a pragmatic enforcer who saw through the boss's stoic facade. "Boss, we've got shipments incoming from Incheon. Real issues that could sink us if the ports tighten up. And you're fixated on this? She's just a waitress." Jiwon stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing like storm clouds gathering. Not anymore. The words hung heavy, laced with finality. Chul raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He knew that tone meant the line had been drawn. Jiwon turned to the window, watching rain streak the city lights below. Assign a team. Discreet surveillance on Danielle Richards. I want her routines, her contacts, every shadow that follows her. No interference unless she's in danger. And Chul make it invisible. She can't know. Chul nodded, pulling out his phone to relay orders. Understood, but if this blows back... It won't. Jiwon's voice was steel. Not until I'm ready. The team moved like ghosts in the night, blending into Busan's bustling underbelly. Danielle's world unfolded under their watchful eyes, a quiet existence carved from necessity and fear. Her apartment was a modest unit in a nondescript neighborhood on the city's edge, where the hum of street vendors and distant harbor horns provided a fragile veil of normalcy. It was far from the luxury of the restaurant, tucked in a building with peeling paint and flickering hallway lights, the kind of place where immigrants like her could fade into the background. She was polite but distant with her neighbors, a quick nod to the elderly Korean woman next door, a brief exchange with the Jamaican family upstairs about the weather or shared recipes. No lingering conversations, no invitations inside. Her days blurred into routine. Early shifts at a nearby cafe to supplement her waitress gig. Hurried walks home under the cover of dusk, always glancing over her shoulder. But it was at night that her fear revealed itself most starkly. One evening, as rain pelted the streets, the surveillance team watched from an unmarked van across the road. Danielle approached her building, umbrella clutched like a shield, her steps quick and measured. She fumbled her keys at the door, scanning the shadows before slipping inside. Upstairs, through a discreet camera feed they'd planted earlier, a risky but necessary move, they saw her ritual. The door closed with a heavy thud, followed by the click of not one, not two, but 3 deadbolts sliding into place. She leaned against the wood for a moment, eyes closed, as if willing the world outside to disappear. Then, methodically, she checked the windows, drawing curtains tight, testing locks. Only then did she allow herself to breathe, shedding her coat to reveal arms still marked by fading bruises. In the dim glow of a single lamp, she prepared a simple meal, jerk-seasoned rice from home, a nod to her Jamaican roots, eating alone at a scarred table, the rain her only companion. Fear lingered in every movement, a silent storm brewing within her small sanctuary. The first clue emerged 2 nights later, under a moonless sky heavy with mist. Jiwon's men, positioned in shifts, spotted it. A luxury black sedan idling near her building, engine humming low like a predator's growl. It parked in the alley, lights off, waiting. No one exited, but the presence was deliberate, ominous. The team snapped photos, ran the plates through back channels, discreet inquiries that skirted official records. Chul delivered the report before dawn, slipping into Jiwon's penthouse overlooking the harbor. The boss hadn't slept. He sat at his desk, a half-empty glass of soju beside him, staring at surveillance stills. The sedan traces back to a private fleet, Chul said, laying out the prints. Registered to Busan Central Hospital. Driver's logs point to one user, Dr. Minho Park. Jiwon leaned forward, eyes scanning the images. Park's face stared back from a file photo, polished, smiling, the epitome of respectability. The angel surgeon? His voice carried a bitter edge. The twist hit like a wave crashing against rocks. Park wasn't just anyone. He was a national hero, celebrated for his humanitarian work, free clinics for the underserved, speeches at galas about combating human trafficking, awards from the government for his life-saving efforts. Newspapers hailed him as Busan's beacon of hope, a man who mended the broken while donating fortunes to police charities and political campaigns. To the city, he was untouchable, a philanthropist whose white coat shielded him from scrutiny. But Jiwon saw through the facade, the way a shark senses blood in the water. The sedan's nocturnal visits, timed to Danielle's routines, it reeked of control, of a man who wielded influence like a weapon. Memories of his mother flared again, her bruises hidden while society praised her abuser as a pillar of the community. Power without compassion, indeed. Park's celebrated status only amplified the corruption, a monster cloaked in benevolence. Jiwon stood, walking to the window where the first light pierced the rain clouds. The city sprawled below, its gleaming towers built on lies and hidden pains. He whispered to himself, the words a quiet vow. The city worships its monsters. The city worships its monsters. Jiwon's whisper lingered in the penthouse air, a quiet indictment as dawn bled through the rain-streaked windows. Below, Busan stirred harbor lights flickering like distant promises, oblivious to the shadows festering in its heart. He turned from the view, the dossier on Park still open on his desk, its contents a map to revelations he wasn't sure he wanted. But ignorance was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not when Danielle's bruises echoed his mother's, pulling him into a storm he hadn't chosen but couldn't ignore. Across the city, in her dimly lit apartment, Danielle couldn't escape the echoes either. Sleep evaded her that night, as it often did, leaving her to wander the corridors of memory. She sat on the edge of her bed, the rain a soft patter against the window, and let the past reclaim her. It started in the sterile glow of Busan Central Hospital, years ago, when she'd arrived from Jamaica full of ambition, a fresh medical resident, with a scholarship and dreams of healing the overlooked. The corridors had been her sanctuary, endless white halls buzzing with urgency, the scent of antiseptic mingling with the faint salt of the nearby sea. Dr. Minho Park had been her beacon then, the renowned surgeon whose lectures drew crowds, his hands steady as they mended broken bodies. She'd admired him fiercely, his precision, his charisma, the way he championed the vulnerable in public speeches. "Medicine is mercy," he'd say, eyes gleaming under the fluorescent lights, and she'd believed him. Admiration had twisted slowly, insidiously, into control. It began with late-night shifts he assigned her, praising her dedication while isolating her from peers. Then came the personal touches, a hand on her shoulder lingering too long, invitations to private dinners disguised as mentorship. She resisted at first, polite but firm, but Park's influence was a web promotions dangled like bait, her visa status a subtle threat. When she finally relented, drawn by his promises of advancement, the control deepened. Jealous rages in empty on-call rooms, bruises blooming where scrubs could hide them. "You're mine to shape," he'd whisper, his voice a scalpel carving away her independence. The breaking point came when she stumbled upon the horror behind his facade. Late one night, reviewing patient files, she discovered discrepancies undocumented immigrants funneled into experimental trials without consent, their bodies used for off-book procedures, silenced with threats or payoffs. Park's humanitarian empire was a front, shell companies laundering money from traffickers, using the hospital as a pipeline for exploited women, their treatments a cover for control. Danielle had confronted him, voice trembling but resolute. "This isn't medicine, it's monstrosity." He'd laughed, cold and unyielding, then demoted her overnight. When she threatened to whistleblow, the retaliation was swift. Fabricated misconduct charges, her credentials revoked, her life dismantled. She fled the hospital, but not the shadows reduced to waitressing. Her dreams shattered like the glass she dropped in Jiwon's presence. Even now, the fear clung like humidity after a storm. Anonymous calls pierced the quiet of her nights, her phone buzzing with blocked numbers, silence on the other end when she answered, heavy breathing that echoed Park's control. Shadows felt too familiar. A figure lingering near her building, the glint of a black sedan vanishing around corners. She triple-checked locks, slept with a knife under her pillow, her Jamaican resilience fraying under the weight of isolation. Was it paranoia? Or was he still watching, waiting to reclaim what he saw as his? Jiwon, meanwhile, delved deeper into the abyss. He summoned Han Yo-jin, his sharp-tongued hacker, to the penthouse as morning rain gave way to a drizzling haze. Yo-jin arrived like a shadow herself, petite, with neon-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing, her laptop a weapon more lethal than any gun in his arsenal. "You rang, boss?" "This better be good. I was mid-code on that port security bypass." "Dr. Minho Park," Jiwon said, sliding the dossier across the table. "Peel back the layers. Everything." Yo-jin cracked her knuckles, fingers flying over keys as she infiltrated firewalls with the ease of a thief picking locks. The discoveries unspooled in quiet horror. Encrypted patient lists, detailing relocated immigrants, women from Southeast Asia and the Caribbean, their medical records altered to hide abuse, funneled through Park's clinics for illegal trials. Shell companies bloomed like weeds fronts for trafficking networks, laundering profits through hospital donations. And the coded payments, discreet transfers to politicians, police chiefs, even judges, ensuring investigations vanished like mist. One file revealed bribes to silence a prior whistleblower, a nurse who'd disappeared after speaking out. Park's empire wasn't benevolence. It was a meticulously constructed horror, veiled in white coats and public acclaim. Jiwon absorbed it in silence, the revelations settling like lead in his gut. His own syndicate thrived on corruption backroom deals, shadowed alliances that kept his operations flowing. Violence was his currency, mercy a rare indulgence. Yet Park's crimes disgusted him on a visceral level, exploiting the vulnerable under the guise of healing, twisting compassion into chains. It mirrored the hypocrisy that had destroyed his mother, society blind to the monsters it elevated. Killing Park would be effortless, a quiet order, a body in the harbor, erased like so many before. Too easy. It wouldn't dismantle the system shielding him, wouldn't grant Danielle the justice she deserved. No, this required something sharper, exposure, a revolution born from restraint. He studied Park's photograph, the man's polished smile mocking him from the screen. Jiwon's jaw flexed, tension coiling like a spring. "If the law protects him," he murmured, voice low and resolute. "I won't. If the law protects him," Jiwon murmured, voice low and resolute. "I won't." The words echoed in the penthouse, a vow sealed in the dim light as Yojin packed her laptop, casting him a knowing glance before slipping out. The rain had eased to a persistent drizzle, mirroring the slow burn of his resolve. Park's empire loomed like a gathering storm, but Jiwon needed more than data. He needed truth from the one person at its center. Danielle. Tonight, he would confront her, peel back the layers of fear she'd armored herself with. But force wouldn't break her. Only trust could. Late evening draped the restaurant in shadows, the air thick with the scent of grilled seafood and lingering jasmine from elite patrons' perfumes. Danielle moved through her shift like a ghost, her nerves frayed tighter than the apron strings she double-knotted. Every clink of glassware jolted her. Every glance from coworkers felt like scrutiny. She'd spotted Jiwon's sleek black car pulling up earlier, his presence a magnetic pull she desperately avoided. Serving tables on the far side of the dining room, she kept her head down, sleeves tugged low, her Jamaican grace reduced to mechanical efficiency. The bruises had faded slightly, but the memory of his piercing stare from that spilled wine night haunted her. He saw too much, asked too much. In a city where power crushed the weak, men like him were dangers she couldn't afford. As the crowd thinned, a waiter approached her, voice hushed. "Mr. Kim wants you in the private room." Now. Her stomach twisted, a cold wave crashing through her. Avoidance shattered. She nodded, smoothing her uniform, and made her way down the hushed corridor, the rain's soft rhythm against the windows amplifying her heartbeat. The private room was a sanctuary of dark wood and low lighting, a bottle of aged soju on the table. Jiwon seated like a king in repose. He looked up as she entered, his eyes dark, unreadable, locking onto hers. "No escape now. Close the door, Miss Richards," he said, his tone calm but commanding, like the sea before a tempest. She complied, the click echoing like a lock turning. Standing rigid, tray clutched like a shield, she avoided his gaze. "If this is about the other night, sit." He gestured to the chair opposite, his voice softening just enough to unsettle her. She hesitated, then perched on the edge, tension coiling in her limbs. Jiwon leaned forward, elbows on the table, his presence filling the room like smoke. "Who did this to you?" The question was direct, laced with an intensity that demanded truth, his eyes tracing the hidden marks beneath her sleeve. Danielle's breath caught, her mind flashing to Park's grip, his whispered threats in sterile halls. "You don't understand. He's powerful, connected. If I say anything, so am I." His words cut through, steady and unyielding, a promise wrapped in steel. "Power doesn't scare me, Danielle. It never has." The use of her first name sent a shiver through her, intimate, invasive. She met his eyes then, fire sparking amid her fear. Powerful like him? Using fear to control people? To make them bend? "You're no different. Men like you think you can just take what you want, break what resists." Her voice rose, accusation sharp as a scalpel, born from years of Park's manipulations. "You corner me here, demand answers like I'm yours to command. It's the same game. Fear, always fear." The room fell silent, the rain outside a muffled roar. Jiwon held her gaze, his expression unchanging. But something flickered in his eyes, not anger, but a shadow of understanding. He didn't lash out, didn't raise his voice or loom closer. Instead, he pushed back his chair slowly, standing with deliberate grace. "If that's what you see," he said quietly, turning toward the door, "then I'll leave you to it." He walked away, each step measured, leaving the room without another word. The door closed softly behind him, the absence of retaliation hanging in the air like unspoken thunder. Danielle sat frozen, her accusation echoing in the emptiness. She'd expected fury, dominance, the same cycle she'd endured with Park. But Jiwon had simply withdrawn. No threats, no insistence. It was a pivot she hadn't anticipated, a crack in the armor of her distrust. Alone now, she exhaled, the tension easing into confusion. His power was undeniable, a force that could crush empires, yet he'd chosen restraint, not to manipulate, but to respect her boundaries. For the first time, she questioned it. Could that power protect instead of destroy? Shield her from the shadows that haunted her, without demanding her soul in return? The thought lingered, a fragile seed of trust taking root amid the storm of her fears. Perhaps he wasn't like Park after all. Perhaps his fire could burn away the ice of her isolation. Outside, in the alley behind the restaurant, Jiwon stepped into the rain, the drizzle soaking his suit as he lit a cigarette. The flame flickered briefly, illuminating his dark eyes, shadowed with unspoken burdens. He inhaled deeply, watching smoke curl into the night, mingling with the mist. "You can't fix pain by pretending not to see it," he murmured to the empty storm, the words a quiet mantra. The city lights blurred beyond, but his path was clear. Trust would come, or it wouldn't. Either way, Park's reckoning loomed. "You can't fix pain by pretending not to see it," Jiwon murmured to the empty storm, the words a quiet mantra. The cigarette burned low between his fingers, its glow a fleeting defiance against the relentless drizzle. He crushed it under his heel, the rain washing away the embers as he turned back inside, his mind sharpening like a blade. Restraint had bought him time with Danielle, but time was a luxury eroding fast. Park's shadows loomed larger with every revelation, and Jiwon needed leverage, something unbreakable to shatter the surgeon's facade. The digital underworld called. Yojin would be his guide. By midnight, the penthouse hummed with the low whir of servers and the click of keys. Han Yojin had set up shop in the corner, her setup a fortress of screens and encrypted drives, neon cables snaking like veins through the dim room. The air carried the faint ozone scent of overworked tech, mingling with the ever-present rain pattering against the glass. Jiwon paced nearby, his silhouette cutting through the blue glow, while Chul lounged against the wall, arms crossed, ever the watchful sentinel. Yojin leaned back, cracking a triumphant grin as code scrolled across her main display. "Jackpot, boss! Park's not just dirty, he's a full-on digital hydra." Her fingers danced, pulling up layers of data she'd clawed from hidden servers. Offshore accounts bloomed on the screen. Cayman Islands shells funneling millions, disguised as medical research grants. But the real horror lay in the details: transactions tied to human cargo, women smuggled through Busan's ports, their rehabilitation, a euphemism for exploitation. Yojin's breakthrough hit like a noir revelation. A secret fund labeled Angel's Mercy, ostensibly for victim aid, but in truth a slush pool to silence survivors. Payoffs to families, forged deportations, even hits disguised as accidents. One entry chilled the room. A Jamaican nurse, much like Danielle, relocated after questioning trials, her file marked resolved with a cold finality. Jiwon stopped pacing, eyes narrowing at the screen. "He's built an empire on broken bodies. How deep does it go?" "Deep as the abyss," Yojin replied, her tone laced with disgust. "Linked to traffickers in Seoul and beyond. But here's the catch." She zoomed in on an encrypted vault, its interface pulsing with red warnings. The core evidence: video logs, victim testimonies, the full money trail. It's locked behind biometric encryption, retinal scan and ID credentials. And get this, it's tied to former staff access. Specifically, one Danielle Richards. Her old hospital login is the key. Without it, this stays buried. The room tensed, the rain outside amplifying the stakes like a thriller's underscore. Jiwon absorbed it, his jaw tightening. Returning Danielle to the hospital, the very lair of her abuser, was a gamble laced with peril. But without that data, exposure was a hollow threat. He nodded to Chul. "Bring her here." Discreetly, "It's time she knows." Danielle arrived an hour later, escorted from her apartment under the guise of a shift extension. She stepped into the penthouse warily, her eyes widening at the high-tech setup and the city sprawl beyond the windows. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the lights into ethereal smears. Jiwon met her gaze, his presence steady but not overbearing, a far cry from their last encounter. "Thank you for coming. This isn't a demand, it's a proposal." She crossed her arms, fear mingling with the budding trust from their confrontation. "What is this? More questions?" "Answers." He gestured to the screens, Yojin stepping aside to reveal the hacked files. As Danielle scanned the data, the accounts, the rehabilitation fund, the names of silenced women, her face paled, memories crashing like waves. "Park, this is him. All of it." Her voice trembled, but anger flickered beneath. "I knew, but seeing it." Jiwon stepped closer, his tone low and earnest. We can end him. Expose it all. But the vault needs your credentials. Your retinal scan. You'd have to go back to the hospital. Terror flashed in her eyes, raw and immediate. No. You don't understand what he's capable of. The corridors, the guards, it's his domain. If he catches me. She backed away, shaking her head. I escaped once. I can't go back. It's suicide. Yeojin chimed in, voice pragmatic. We'd have a plan. Disguises, remote hacks, extraction. But yeah, it's risky. Danielle's resistance held. Her body language a fortress, arms tight, eyes averted. Why drag me into your war? You're a mafia boss. Just handle him your way, quietly. Because my way isn't justice, Jiwon said softly, the admission hanging heavy. It's vengeance. You deserve more. The city does. But I won't force you. He held her gaze, offering the choice Park never had. The room fell silent, save for the rain's insistent drum. Danielle paced, weighing the terror against the spark of empowerment. Returning meant facing ghosts, but staying silent meant letting Park's machine grind on. Finally, she stopped, meeting his eyes with a resolve born from fire. If we do this, you promise protection? Real protection? Always, Jiwon replied, the word a vow. She nodded, terrified but unbowed. Then I'll go. As Yeojin began plotting the infiltration, Chul pulled Jiwon aside, his voice a low rumble in the subplot's undercurrent. Boss, this is nuclear. Exposing Park publicly? It'll splash back. Police on his payroll, politicians in his pocket, they'll come for us. Raids, investigations. The syndicate could fracture. Jiwon glanced at Danielle, her silhouette framed against the rainy window, a symbol of the compassion reshaping his power. He turned back to Chul, his expression unyielding. Let them come. Let them come. Jiwon's words hung in the penthouse like a challenge to the storm outside, his gaze steady as the rain intensified, turning Busan's night into a watery veil. Chul nodded grimly, the subplot of impending fallout simmering unspoken. But there was no turning back now. Danielle's agreement had set the gears in motion. Yeojin mapped the infiltration with precision. Entry points, blind spots, extraction routes. As dawn approached, Jiwon watched Danielle steel herself, her fear a palpable shadow. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. She met his eyes, the fragile trust between them, a lifeline. I know. The plan was set. The return to her nightmare loomed. Dusk cloaked Busan Central Hospital in a deceptive calm, its towering facade gleaming under intermittent streetlights, rain sluicing down like tears from the sky. Danielle approached the service entrance, disguised as catering staff, a crisp uniform pilfered from a supplier, hair tucked under a cap. Her Jamaican features softened by makeup to blend with the diverse night crew. Every step echoed in her mind, the sterile scent of disinfectant hitting her like a wave of buried trauma. The hallways were ghosts from her past. Endless white corridors where admiration had curdled into control, where Park's shadow had first fallen over her life. She pushed a cart laden with covered trays, a prop for her cover, her heart pounding as memories assaulted her late-night rounds under his watchful eye, the first bruise in an empty exam room, the demotion that stripped her of everything. Each turn reopened wounds, the fluorescent hum a reminder of dreams shattered in these very walls. Yeojin's voice crackled softly in her earpiece, remote guidance threading through the tension. You're clear left at the next junction. Security cam looping in 3, 2, go. Danielle slipped into the administrative wing, the cart abandoned in a side alcove. Her old credentials, reactivated via Yeojin's hacks, granted access to a restricted terminal in Park's oversight office. The room was dim, rain pattering against the window like impatient fingers. She sat at the console, inserting the ID card, her retinal scan unlocking the biometric firewall with a soft beep. The screen flared to life, the vault dropping its defenses. Horror unfolded in digital waves. Victim lists scrolled endlessly, women like her, undocumented immigrants from Jamaica, the Philippines, Vietnam, their medical files twisted into logs of abuse. Experimental trials without consent. Bodies commodified for profit. Corruption logs detailing bribes to officials, silencing investigations with cold efficiency. Invoices for rehabilitation that masked trafficking routes. Offshore accounts siphoning funds from hospital donations. One file hit like a gut punch. Her own name, marked non-compliant, with notes on her relocation attempts. Danielle's hands trembled, catharsis mixing with revulsion. This was the proof, the key to dismantling Park's empire. Yojin, it's all here. Copying now. Alarms shattered the silence, red lights pulsing as the system detected the breach. Shit, secondary firewall tripped. Yojin's voice spiked with urgency. Get out. Security's mobilizing. Panic surged. But Danielle grabbed the drive, yanking it free as footsteps thundered in the hall. She darted out, the cart her only cover. But Park's men, burly guards in hospital security garb, stormed the floor, radios crackling. Intruder and admin, lock it down. She slipped into a nearby storage room, heart slamming, barricading the door with shelves of supplies. The space was claustrophobic, shelves of linens and medical gear pressing in like accusations from her past. Cornered, she huddled in the dark, breath shallow. The rain outside a distant roar drowned by approaching boots. They were close handles rattling, voices barking orders. No way out. Terror clawed at her, the ghosts of the hospital closing in. Then, a ding echoed the elevator at the hall's end. Doors slid open with mechanical finality. Jiwon stood there, dressed in black like a shadow-given form, rain-soaked from his covert entry, his expression carved from fury, eyes blazing, jaw set in lethal determination. He moved like a storm incarnate, silent and swift, his presence alone scattering the guards' formation. The fight erupted in a blur of efficiency. Jiwon disarmed the first man with a precise strike to the throat, silent as death, his movements a deadly dance honed from years in the shadows. A second guard lunged. Jiwon sidestepped, delivering a merciless elbow to the temple, dropping him without a sound. The third fired a wild shot muffled by a silencer, but Jiwon was faster, twisting the weapon away and ending the threat with a chokehold that left the man gasping, unconscious. Blood flecked his sleeve from a grazed knuckle, but he fought with controlled ferocity, every action protecting, not destroying. Danielle watched from the cracked door, her world tilting. This was the monster they'd whispered about, the Mafia boss who commanded fear. Yet in his efficiency, his silence, his merciless precision, she saw salvation. For the first time, safety bloomed amid the terror, a paradoxical rush that left her breathless. He wasn't just fighting, he was shielding her, his power a barrier against the chaos. Safe and terrified simultaneously. Her heart raced with the danger's kiss, the raw intensity of his protection, the thrill of his fury unleashed for her. The hall fell quiet, the guards subdued. Jiwon turned, spotting her in the storage room. He approached, rain dripping from his coat, blood staining his sleeve like a badge of his world. His eyes softened fractionally, but the fury lingered. Now you understand why they call me a monster. Now you understand why they call me a monster. Jiwon's words cut through the hospital's stifling silence, his bloodied sleeve a stark contrast to the sterile white walls. Danielle nodded, still reeling from the fight's raw intensity, her hand clutching the data drive like a talisman. He guided her out through shadowed service exits, rain lashing their escape as Yojin's hacks looped cameras and silenced alarms. Back in the penthouse, safe but shaken, the weight of what they'd uncovered settled like storm clouds. The data was a weapon, now it was time to unleash it. Jiwon turned to Yojin, his voice steady amid the rising tension. Release it. All of it. The plan ignited like a fuse in the dead of night. Yojin orchestrated the digital onslaught from her command center, her fingers a blur as she infiltrated hundreds of news feeds across Korea. Video leaks flooded social media. Grainy footage of Park's trials, women pleading in hidden rooms, their faces blurred but their pain raw. Internal emails cascaded into public view, Park's directives to silence victims, laced with cold calculations. Offshore accounts were laid bare. Transaction logs linking him to trafficking rings, bribes flowing to high offices like poisoned rivers. Hacked billboards in Busan's bustling districts flickered to life with projections of falsified medical records, the angel surgeon's facade crumbling in real time. News outlets, from local broadcasters to national networks, were bombarded with anonymous dumps, headlines screaming, "Busan's hero exposed, trafficking and corruption in the heart of medicine." It wasn't a leak. It was an explosion, data detonating across the city like shrapnel from a bomb. Busan erupted in chaos as dawn broke, the rain-swept streets transforming into battlegrounds of outrage. Protests swelled outside the hospital, crowds chanting under umbrellas, signs decrying Angel's betrayal and demanding justice. Politicians scrambled the mayor, caught in email chains accepting donations, resigned in a hastily convened press conference, his face ashen on live feeds. Hospital board members followed, their empires collapsing under the weight of public fury. Police stations buzzed with internal purges, Officers tied to Park's payoffs suspended amid investigations. Overnight, his philanthropic network unraveled. Clinics shuttered, charities audited, his face plastered on every screen as the most hated man in Korea. The city that had worshipped him turned feral, social media ablaze with hashtags like #Fall of the Angel, memes and testimonies pouring in from hidden victims emboldened by the breach. Sirens wailed through the downpour, riots clashing with riot gear, the air electric with the scent of revolution and wet pavement. Danielle watched it unfold from the penthouse, the massive screens mirroring the storm outside. Curled on a leather couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders, she stared at the TV as Park's mugshot dominated the news cycle. His polished smile twisted into a grimace of defeat. Reporters dissected his fall, victims' anonymous stories flooding in, vindicating every whisper she'd buried. A hollow vindication washed over her, sweet but empty, like rain filling a cracked vessel. She dreamed of this moment, of seeing him stripped bare. But the catharsis felt distant, tainted by the lives already ruined, including her own. Her hands trembled, the drive's weight gone, but the scars remaining. Safe in Jiwon's domain, she felt the pull of gratitude and the sting of complicity in the chaos she'd helped unleash. As the broadcasts looped, she rose, finding Jiwon at the window, overlooking the turbulent city. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the flashing lights below. The conflict boiled up in her, words spilling out like an accusation. "You destroyed him. Look at this, the city in flames, people suffering because of what we did. But you destroyed yourself too. Your world thrives in shadows. This exposure? It'll bring them all down on you." Jiwon turned, his eyes dark pools reflecting the storm. He didn't flinch, his voice calm but edged with the moral fire that had driven him. He built his world on people's pain, exploiting the weak, hiding behind a white coat and false mercy. "I built mine on truth, even if it's forged in blood. One of us had to fall. Better him than the innocents he crushed." The reply hung between them, a bridge over the abyss of their differences. Danielle searched his face, seeing not just the monster, but the man haunted by his mother's echoes, choosing compassion's revolution over easy vengeance. Yet the hollowness lingered, a reminder that justice's price was steep. Then, a breaking news alert shattered the moment. Yojin's screens flashing red. "Boss, you need to see this." Footage rolled. Park's transport van, ambushed en route to custody, guards downed in a precise hit. The surgeon, handcuffed but defiant, vanishing into the rain-slicked night. He'd escaped, slipping through the chaos like a shadow unbound. The cliffhanger loomed. Park was free, desperate, and now he knew who had orchestrated his downfall. Park was free, desperate, and now he knew who had orchestrated his downfall. The news alert's glow faded from the penthouse screens, leaving a chill that the rain outside couldn't match. Jiwon surged into action, barking orders to Chul and Yojin trackers, informants, every shadow in his network mobilized. But the storm had already shifted. Park moved like a cornered predator, vanishing into Busan's underbelly. Danielle, still reeling from the broadcasts, insisted on returning to her apartment for a semblance of normalcy. "I need space," she'd said, her voice steady but eyes haunted. Jiwon assigned discreet protection, but in the chaos of the city's uproar, a single gap was all it took. Park's revenge struck swift and monstrous, his rage a festering wound exposed by the leaks. He blamed her for everything, the Empire's collapse, the hatred now branding him. Under the cover of night, as rain hammered the streets, his remaining loyalists, corrupt guards who'd evaded the purges, ambushed her outside her building. A black van screeched up, doors flying open, a cloth over her mouth, the world blurring into darkness. She awoke bound in the van's back, Park's face looming over her, twisted with fury. "You thought you could destroy me?" he snarled, his once polished demeanor shattered, eyes wild like a beast unmasked. "My angel, my protege betrayer, will flee to Thailand. You'll serve me there, silent as you should have stayed." His hands gripped her arms, bruising anew, his monstrous blame a torrent. Every lost bribe, every resigned ally, laid at her feet. The van raced through the downpour, heading to an abandoned shipping terminal on Busan's outskirts. His plan to escape by sea, a desperate bid to reclaim control. The setting was a relic of forgotten industry. Rusted containers stacked like tombstones, the terminal desolate under a ferocious rainstorm. Wind howled through skeletal cranes, waves crashing against the docks with primal fury. Park dragged Danielle into a cavernous warehouse, flickering lights casting long shadows, the air thick with salt and decay. Rain pounded the metal roof like gunfire, mirroring his unraveling rage. He shoved her against a crate, knife in hand, his philanthropist's mask gone, revealing the monster beneath. "You and that criminal thug, you think you've won? I'll end you both, starting with you." His voice echoed, monstrous and broken, blaming her for the justice that had finally caught him. Jiwon's arrival was silent, precise, a shadow slipping through the storm. His men had traced the van's plates via Yojin's hacks, converging on the terminal like wolves. He moved alone at first, black coat slick with rain, navigating the labyrinth of containers with lethal grace. Gunfire erupted suddenly, Park's guards spotting the intrusion, bullets ricocheting off metal in the downpour. Jiwon responded with calculated fury. A silenced shot dropping one sentry from the shadows, a precise takedown of another in hand-to-hand, his movements a blur of efficiency amid the chaos. He pressed forward, gunfire flashing like lightning, shadows dancing as he confronted the remnants, disarming, subduing, leaving them groaning in the mud. The warehouse door creaked open, rain sheeting in, and there he stood, eyes locked on Park, the confrontation electric. Park whirled, knife to Danielle's throat, his rage peaking. "One step, and she dies. You took everything, now watch her pay." Jiwon's gaze was fury incarnate, but his voice steady. "Let her go. This ends now." He advanced, disarming the last guard with a swift strike, closing the distance. Park lunged wildly. Jiwon dodged, countering with a blow that sent the surgeon sprawling, knife clattering away. In the flickering light, Jiwon stood over him, drawing his gun, the storm outside roaring in symphony. He turned to Danielle, freeing her bonds with gentle precision, then pressed the weapon into her hand. "Justice is yours." The choice hung heavy, the gun cold in her palm, rain drumming like a heartbeat. Park cowered, pleading now, his monstrous facade crumbling. Emotional peak surged through her years of pain, control, the hollow vindication of his fall. She raised the gun, finger trembling on the trigger, visions of revenge flashing. But as she met Jiwon's eyes, seeing the monster he embraced for her sake, clarity pierced the storm. "If I become you," she whispered, lowering the weapon. "He wins." Jiwon nodded, understanding the reckoning. Resolution of power followed. He took the gun, aiming not to kill but to cripple a single shot to Park's leg, the crack echoing as the surgeon screamed, collapsing in agony, stripped of mobility, of control. "You'll face the law, you twisted," Jiwon said coldly, binding him for the authorities already en route, alerted anonymously. No easy death, only the slow purge of true justice. Symbolic ending enveloped them as they stepped out. The storm raged, wind whipping rain into a cleansing fury. Mirroring the purge within, corruption washed away, pain confronted. Danielle finally breathed freely, the air sharp and alive, her chains broken not by vengeance, but by compassion's revolution. Jiwon stood beside her, the monster receding, as lightning illuminated a new dawn. The storm raged, wind whipping rain into a cleansing fury. Mirroring the purge within, corruption washed away, pain confronted. Danielle finally breathed freely, the air sharp and alive, her chains broken not by vengeance, but by compassion's revolution. Jiwon stood beside her, the monster receding, as lightning illuminated a new dawn. Sirens wailed in the distance, closing in on the terminal, but for that suspended moment, the world held its breath. Park's empire had fallen, their war was won. Yet as the rain eased to a gentle patter, both knew the true reckoning lay in the quiet aftermath. Months later, Busan still bore the scars of the scandal, its recovery a slow, reflective mending under overcast skies. The angel surgeon affair had ripped through the city like a typhoon, leaving institutions in tatters. Dr. Minho Park languished in prison, his trial a media spectacle, convicted on charges of trafficking, corruption, and abuse. His white coat stripped away, reduced to a number in a cell. Public pressure had forced sweeping reforms. The hospital system overhauled, independent audits dismantling the networks of complicity, new oversight boards ensuring transparency. Clinics once under his shadow now operated with renewed integrity, victims' voices amplified in policy changes. The city, once blind to its monsters, now watched warily, protests giving way to cautious hope. Rainy seasons came and went, washing away the last echoes of chaos. But the purge had left Busan forever, changed a testament to power's fragility when met with truth. Danielle's new life bloomed in the quiet spaces of redemption, her dreams revived like spring after a long winter. She volunteered at a modest clinic in a quieter district, one dedicated to helping abuse victims, immigrants, women like her, seeking healing from physical and emotional wounds. No longer hiding behind a waitress's apron, she assisted with counseling sessions, drawing on her medical background to offer care she'd once been denied. The work was redemptive. Each story she heard a mirror to her own, each step forward a catharsis. Her Jamaican roots infused the space with warmth herbal teas from home, rhythmic music in waiting rooms creating a sanctuary where silence gave way to strength. She breathed freely now, no deadbolts or shadows haunting her nights. Her bruises faded to memories. Yet, in reflective moments, as rain tapped the clinic windows, she thought of the man who'd ignited this change, his restrained power, a force that had saved rather than destroyed. Jiwon's disappearance added to the city's swirling rumors, a ghost story whispered in underworld corners and elite lounges alike. Some said he'd fled to Hong Kong, rebuilding his syndicate in neon-lit shadows. Others claimed Tokyo, where he'd vanished into corporate facades. Whispers of his death circulated a rival's hit, a quiet suicide amid the heat from exposed allies. Retirement tales painted him as a recluse, perhaps on a remote island, shedding the Mafia crown. No one knew the truth. His empire hummed on under Chul's steady hand, but Jiwon himself had evaporated like mist after rain. Danielle heard the rumors, felt the void. But in her quiet reflections, she understood his war had been for redemption, not glory. He'd chosen to fade, leaving the light for those he'd protected. The final scene unfolded on a drizzly afternoon, months into her new rhythm. Danielle sorted files at the clinic, the soft patter of rain a comforting backdrop, when a courier delivered an envelope no return address, postmarked from abroad. Her hands steadied as she opened it, revealing a bank slip, a substantial wire transfer, enough to fund the clinic's expansion for years. Tucked inside, a single note on plain paper, the message brief and unsigned, for D.R.J.K. She traced the initials, a quiet smile breaking through, tears blurring the ink. In that moment, the war's echoes faded, redemption complete. Some monsters choose to destroy the world, others choose to save it. And there you have it, the storm clears, but the revolution echoes. If this tale of mercy rewriting power moved you, subscribe for more epic stories like this. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what theme hit home hardest. Oh, and don't miss out, click that next video popping up on your screen right now for another thrilling ride. Thanks for joining the storm.